What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. First, go follow me on at Kojak Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to support the show, got a Patreon, Conspiracy or JAC. I don't know. I got all the link, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence on Patreon and Venmo. I got all the links in the show notes and everything like that. So if you want to support the show, it's all there. But please subscribe and leave a review. So first, I just got to check that we're set, and hopefully everyone can hear me all right. I always worry about that. Let's see. Well, we're gonna play. Let's see if it goes on Twitter here. Oh my God! All right, we're good. There we go. All right. Because, when it's by yourself, you don't know if it's working or not. But so today's episode is about, we're going to continue our journey of the history of central banks. And dude, I guess I always say this, like the synchronicity of what I'm researching or reading about and how it relates to what's going on currently in our current political climate. But I saw, I'm as everyone else, we saw that the United States is thinking about giving or talking about, I don't know if it was today they talked about they're going to give 33 billion or another 40 billion to Ukraine. And how do you think we afford that? Like, we are in $33 trillion worth of debt right now. That's not even including Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, et cetera, et cetera. With all that stuff concluded, we are looking at over $300 trillion that we don't have. We're never going to have it. It's made to do this. This system is created this way. How can I say that? Because every time, there's no example of a central bank that bettered the country. Every single bank. We talked last episode about Rome, and though they didn't have like a central bank per se, all the wealth was controlled by the Catholic Church. A third of all the money in Rome, in the Roman Empire, all the money and land was controlled by the Catholic Church. Was it spent? Was it given to charities? Was it given to needy families? No, they hoarded the wealth. So that's a third of the wealth that is sucked out of the economy, never to be repaid. It's just held. It never works. And so the reason why I was saying it never works, England, they got their central bank started in 1694. That was also what we talked about last episode. What's up, Brian? My boy. Thanks for always coming here, dude. It's so nice of you. But yeah, England, 1694. They're still at the start of World War I. At the start of World War I, they were in debt $650 million in 1913. $650 million. And not only that, half of that 650 million, it wasn't stuff they got. It was the interest on the loans they took out from their central bank. They will never recover. We will never recover. And I'm going to talk about him today. My boy, Andrew Jackson, his like quote, and I have it written, but paraphrasing, but if the American people understood the monetary system, there would be a revolt tomorrow morning. And dude, it is just beyond disgusting. I don't think anybody besides our little community knows that what the central bank does. And for anybody that maybe is a little confused or whatever, which there is no, I learn so much each time I read, but every time they print money, every time we borrow money, not you and I, because we don't see the benefits of that. Ukraine, $33 billion. It's not that we are just now in the hole $33 billion. We're in the hole, whatever the interest rate is that they set it at. And it's not just a modest rate of 0.2% or something to keep things afloat. No, it'll be 5, whatever, 5, let's say 5%, maybe 3%. Well, 33 billion, 3%, it's a crap ton of money. And it every year that we don't pay it, not doubles, but it goes up again and goes up again and goes up again. So this is a trick, dude. There is no getting out of it. And that's why our founding fathers, who I have mixed feelings about, who I believe were either they were tricked themselves into having a revolution, or they played the scam on us. Some of them, like Jefferson, they knew the horrors that would occur if we had a central bank. And because we're not taught history, because I mean, I always say this to my dad. His schooling was significantly harder than than my age schooling. Mine was a joke, and I went to like one of the best public schools in Eastern Pennsylvania, like a very good public school, and I didn't do a single thing, and I got good grades. So it's just we don't know anything. We don't know any better. Good luck trying. And I guarantee you, there's not a single class in school that talks about the evils of the central banking system. But all right, so that's my recap for last episode. So we talked about Rome, how it started off trading cows. Then they had a honest, virtuous Senate, leaders of the community that said, this is going to be our government. It'll be fair. We'll represent the interests of our people. And just like the scam that is every single republic, within two generations or 50 years, you have corrupt, degenerate, evil people that get into power. And that's the end. There is no coming back from that. Barbara, what's going on? Thanks for coming. You guys are just so nice. It always, whenever I see you guys comment, it like brightens my day, it means so much. So anyway, let me add this. And this guy, he helped. What did he do again? He was a British guy. He helped, something get along with the central bank. He was a disgusting guy. This is what he bought for himself for, serving the Bank of England. Well, he was able to build this beautiful castle that's huge, and there's a beautiful lake behind it here. But anyway, so let's get to France, dude. Napoleon, he is and I talked about this last show briefly, but I have this theory, and it's not, and there's always exceptions to the rule. But if history doesn't write a play about you or a musical, or if they talk poorly, they call you have a syndrome, Napoleon syndrome. Usually it's flip-flop, because the central bankers, history people, they write the books. And anybody who fought back against the central bank, well, you can guarantee that they're not going to have a good history written about them. We mock Napoleon, we laugh at him, and this is bare knowledge. I mean, I barely know anything about Napoleon, but I'm learning more and more. I love that. I love France. Such an amazing place. So sad what's happened to it. Susan, you guys rock. You guys rock. But Napoleon, dude, OG. So let's get right into it. This is also an OG. He's on my King's list that I'm going to bring back. If I could have the ability to reincarnate people or clone people, the Sun King here, he's on my list. So I talked about at last episode, the Bank of England established in 1694 under the guise of, we need to fight France, and this way we can do it. We'll be able to beat the heck out of them. Well, let's make me bigger. I like looking at my face when I do this. But anyway, yeah. So that's they pushed it under the guise, and also the way they got the Bank of England charter passed, which enslaved Britain till now, till forever. The way they did, they snuck it in on a tonnage act. Also, it didn't help that 20% of their House of Commons, of 500 people, 20% couldn't read. A lot of them were farmers and actual leaders of their communities in England. They couldn't show up because it was in the middle of summer. So they snuck this Bank of Charter Act in this, how they're increasing taxes on everything with ships to fight France, which was a central banker created war. And they snuck it in. Very similar to what we do here, or what our politicians do here. None of them read the 500-page bills. None of them. So how do we know what they're not sneaking in? And it's really sickening, honestly. It's literally sickening, and politics is demonic in every way, shape, or form. But anyway, so we talked about that last episode. So at the time, France was the premier power in maritime and territorial possession, so 1690s. And since 1654, France has been ruled by my boy, King Louis XIV, the Sun King. Badass nickname. David, what's up, my man? On my list, I already said possible family lines to seek out and make King of America. He's on it. If we could if somebody can find a descendant of King Louis that speaks decent English, we're getting him to America. We're going to rally around him and make sure he's like his ancestor, and we're putting him as king. That's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. You can join my team. But he was so awesome. He was the Sun King here, King Louis, was versed so well in the trickery and corruption of the banking system. His close ally. And this was so funny. All right. You guys know I read like I read these books, and then my entertainment is fiction books. And so I read this book, The Man in the Iron Mask. I just picked it. I don't know why. I have Kindle Unlimited, so and they have an audio with some of the books. So I picked it. I said, oh, I love castles. I love kings, and did not know there was a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio in the Man in the Iron Mask. But anyway, this is what Man in the Iron Mask talks about, this King Louis. And I was like, what are the odds of this? So his superintendent of finances, Nicholas Fouquet, was secretly betraying the trust that this awesome Sun King had, mishandling state finances, just monstrous corruption, horrible. And Fouquet was put on trial, and the king didn't even kill him. He sentenced him to isolation in one of his fortresses. And that's what happened. The Sun twin, Brian. Oh my God. Did you read Man Behind the Iron Mask as well? But that's the premise of Man Behind the Iron Mask. The premise is, and it's like, it's like almost, it's not it's like based in reality. Like the theory is that King Louis had a twin brother who got pushed. This is so crazy, guys. So you got to go read the book or watch the movie. I don't know what the movie's like, but so King Louis supposedly had a twin brother, and his father or his mother put him in prison, like right when he was born, to hide him. So no claims to the throne. But King Louis, his twin brother tries to overthrow King Louis by tricking everybody, pretending he was him because he was so beloved. And you know who helped his twin brother that was locked up try to overthrow King Louis? The Jesuits, this Jesuit cardinal. And the French then, they made all these Jesuits leave. Then that French guy that helped his twin brother gets sent to like Spain and regroups. And I think that's how it ends. It's like a series. It's written by Alexandre Dumas, who was a swashbuckling machine. So go check those out if you're like bored and you like this kind of topic for fiction, because it's awesome. But back to Fouquet, he was in the book too. Dumas put him in a positive light. So maybe Dumas was a central bank bitch boy. I don't know. But anyway, so they sent him away. So King Louis was hip to this stuff. And there was the War of Spanish Succession, 1702, 1714, the largest military conflict since the Crusades. And it was fought after Louis declared his intention to place his grandson, Philip, on the Spanish throne. So if successful, if Louis was able to put his grandson to be the next in line for the king of Spain, it would have created this huge Franco-Spanish empire and would pose a direct threat to who? To the world, which they probably tell you in the history books. No, to central banking, because King Louis hated the central banks, or hated the Bank of England. He knew what was going on. He understood the trickery. So they can't have that, right? So the English, they build this huge fleet with all their fake fiat money that's just printing off the printing press by the Arkids and the other bankers. And they bought the loyalty of France's enemies by bankrolling them. And that's what you can do when you have money that's based on nothing. Just these other countries couldn't do that. France, King Louis kept them in an honest system. They knew they'd be debt enslaved if he did this. And he said, we have to take this chance. He tried to make an allyship with another superpower of the Spain. But yeah. So anyway, they bankrolled their enemies, and Louis held out for 9 years during the chaos, winning against the evil empire, the Death Star, that is the Bank of England in England. Suddenly, though, so he's winning for 9 years, right? King Louis just beating the back, these interest charging predator class. Suddenly, his heirs all start to die in unnatural circumstances. 1711 is one like grandkid or whatever dies of smallpox, even though he had a disease when he was a child, so he should be immune. A year later, the wife of his grandson died of a fever. A few days later, the husband of that lady died of unknown causes. 5-year-old Duke of Brittany died that same year, 1712. His 3-year-old brother only survived after King Louis ordered his isolation. And so death was all around this guy to send a message. And this is not new, and we'll go into this more, but how many times we talk these stories about the lone gunman, especially back in those days? They existed, buddy. They existed. These were agents, and we're going to get to a quote later, but I just can't wait because it relates. He said he killed, we'll tell you who killed later, but his quote was, very powerful men in Europe told me they would protect me if I killed, it might have been, we'll get to it. But anyway, yeah. So all these people, death around him, treaty signed in 1713, and suddenly So he signed the treaty and said after all this death, his heir stopped dying miraculously. And another grandson died in an unusual riding accident. Not clear if this was a true accident. Brian says, good decade fight, but the Jesuits put the skids on that one. Yeah, dude. They did. They're just a lot of these, dude, it's sad. Like the good guys. That's why I struggle with like crypto and Elon Musk, because we keep expecting someone else to win for us. It's not going to happen. We have to win, right? We have to change and be better. And by us getting better, we'll inspire others to be better, shining lights, kind of helping it. You reap what you sow. I don't know if that expression pertains. I'm thinking of one and messing it up. But anyway, okay. All right. So he signs a treaty. But the English ability to command vast sums of money had not gone unnoticed. France realized, damn, dude, this bank thing is powerful. So in 1716, a Scotsman, John Law, receives a patent to open a private bank in France, patterned on the Bank of England. They would issue banknotes and exchange for gold. So what is it? They give us something and we give them back absolutely nothing. It's like in a movie. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? I don't know, but that's essentially what it is. These people are giving them something that has value, and they're giving them back paper that's worthless. It only has money because they say it's worth it. So in 1718, France, the first central bank came into existence, the Banque Royale, enabled by the French economy to recover and flourish. Right? But it's a central bank. Don't worry. It was only for a short time. 1720, the French government got a loan of 100 million livres. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the bank had difficulty exchanging banknotes for gold coins, and a panic ensued, as always, because when they control the bank, they really can create panics. So the powerful central bank powerful, uncontrolled central bank is created, doing well, more honest. I don't know. So this caused a downward spiral, though. The notes that they were printing for these gold, they gave probably their whole net worth or a lot of their gold, lose 50% of their original value. And eventually, of course, the Banque Royale bankrupt. So this allowed this was why it was a trick. Now I understand what I wrote. So this is why it was a trick. So they put a central bank in France because they saw the power in it. They said, okay, well, let's keep it in check. We'll have a few more rules. It collapses. Now everyone's broke. It's a Great Depression, or everything's pennies on the dollar. So what happens whenever things are pennies on the dollar? Well, the Bank of England and its cronies swoop into France, getting all this stuff pennies on the dollar. How many times have we seen this? Too many. So this happened in, like I said, 1720, and it's just, just chaos for a long time. But then comes a hero who I have right now. If anyone's just listening, I have a man on a horse with his cape blowing in the wind and the horse on its hind legs. Napoleon comes to the plate. So Napoleon was Emperor of France, 1804 to 1815, and he was hip to this as well. He was mindful that money always remains in hiding and only acts through agents. I mean, dude, this guy was so amazing. And maybe I heard he was possibly he was a Freemason. They pushed him to come in and slow things down, and then he got too powerful. Regardless, I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is that he actually fought back, and that's all that any of us can ask for. So he realized international money stood behind every foreign enemy, every monarch and political party. This was a quote: money has no motherland. Financiers are without patriotism and without decency. Their sole object is gain. I mean, so based, dude. Napoleon knew he wanted France's finances for the benefit and the use of his people, for the greater glory of God. And he said that the bedrock of the economy was to be agriculture, for that is the soul of the people, the foundations of the kingdom. Awesome. The next important industry which ministers to the comfort and happiness of industry was the next one he valued. And then he said a poor third, he was our guy, dude. He was a nationalist. He said a poor third importance of the economy was foreign trade, which will only consist of surplus agriculture and surplus industry. I mean, damn, dude, damn. And he said foreign trade out to be a servant of agriculture and industry. These last should never be subordinated to foreign trade. What's up, Gravy? What's up, my dude? Thanks for coming by. And like, could you imagine if America said that today, that everything outside of America comes second? If we want to sell surplus food, we better have enough. We want to sell surplus industry, we better have enough. And we don't live that way at all. But Napoleon wanted financial independence, self-sufficiency in the production of goods for domestic consumption. And this is important because I say this all the time, but any elected official who actually cared about its populace would never allow like offshoring industries. If you were president of the United States, you would make it so challenging to go ship factories over to China. I mean, think about all, like they talk about CO2 pollution that they're, well, then how about, here's a big one. Stop having ships sail across the globe to get us our cheap stuff. Stop it. There you go. That's going to take down tons of gasoline, tons of whatever they use in those huge ships. But that's why, that's why I just know none of these people care. What's up, Jonathan? James, what's going on? What's going on? So Napoleon would not allow loans to be employed for current expense. There was no exception circumstance. It was often said that he did this because no one would give him a loan. That's why he wouldn't take the loans. And he responded to that it was false, that I could get a loan. It wasn't a part of my system. I mean, just a boss. And his first act of assuming power was to establish the Banque de France in 1800 as a joint stock company. So this replaced the current banking system, which had 15 bankers, all private banking houses, which helped manipulate and fund the French Revolution. And I don't know much about, I just know how the Masons were behind the French Revolution. And that one book that I did a show on about, because Artemis says, he was probably a Mason, but that's what that guy's book was too. He said that the Masons started the revolutions to overthrow the monarchies. They placed Napoleon in there. He became too powerful and he kicked them out. He said, I don't want anything to deal with you guys about the bankers and things like that. And that was when they started slowly poisoning them. So anyway, so he creates this new bank. The shareholders get a 6%. Eminem, you're the man, dude. What's up? But so everyone will get a 6% and yearly of their investment. And it did so well that their profits of the bank, they bumped it to 2/3 of the bank's profits in a year divided by shareholders. The largest shareholders of Napoleon's bank were 15 directors, of which Napoleon was the president. And his quote was, "The bank does not belong to the shareholders. It also belongs to the state, since the state has entrusted it with the privilege of issuing money." And I love that quote again, because privilege, like that's something, I say this in my real job, like, we would be honored to get in service on your behalf. And people can just say things, but do you hear our politicians say, thank you for giving me the privilege of representing your needs and representing your family? It's a lot, and just disgusting. In 1803, Napoleon abolished the rights of 2 rival banks. So his quote was, have you told me that in order to preserve credit, it is a general practice that artificial money like that of the Bank of France shall issue from only one source? I adopt that idea. A single bank can be more easily watched than several. And in an emergency, I cannot see virtue of competition of this kind. And I'm almost done with Napoleon quotes. So I'm just setting up the example that he fought back against the central bank. He kicked out the 15 private banks, kicked out these other 2 rival banks, and there was one state bank. And I talked about this last episode, but oh my God, I lost my train of thought. Oh, fiat currency is not inherently bad. Like people with like Austrian economics will tell you, fiat currency is bad. It's only bad if it's controlled by a private source. But if you're the government and you are an honest government, fiat currency works great because it's just easier to, and the only thing you have to watch out for is faking currency. Brian's right. He'll probably be here. He'll be here. Napoleon was so distrustful of bankers, he personalized, supervised the operations of the treasury. He bans the central bankers. Napoleon made franc the most stable currency in Europe, the most stable. Anytime a good leader is leading his people, the press and the bankers get attack dogs to get to work. So the English press began stirring trouble, said he had not observed the conditions of their treaties. He's going to take over the world, blah, blah, blah. And it all collapsed when the Bank of England wanted Napoleon to sign a trade treaty of free trade. Oftentimes, free trade, like we have now, is synonymous with globalization. Another trick of these banksters to steal from your country's middle class or your country's wealth, trying to spread it out all into their banks. But it's just a tactic they use. Globalization has ruined the world. Like, it's literally probably the top 10 things that have been the demise of America. And so they tried to force him to end his isolationism. Again, America was started as an isolation video or an isolation country because that's a national group of people. I'm trying, like, a nationalistic is the way to protect your country, because you don't want to get involved in pointless battles and wars. And Napoleon understood the value of being an isolationist policy. Well, Bank of England doesn't want that. They're losing money. They're losing tons of money that they could be making. And of course, when did America really end its isolationist policy? World War I. What happened right before World War I? The Federal Reserve was started. So it's all connected, dude. Globalization, central banking. There's 3 countries that don't have a central bank: Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. Who gives us a lot of our troubles that we always see in Iran, and they're building nukes, which I don't even think are real. But yeah, it's all a trick. It's a trick. So the Bank of England, they didn't stop with writings or mean tweets about Napoleon. They bankroll Austria, Prussia, Russia, Spain, Sweden to all declare war on France to stop Napoleon from taking over the world. Yep. That's why, again, whenever the Bank of England or any bank funds nations against a leader, again, I always have to look twice about what they say this leader did. There's plenty, like the Guatemalan guy that I always talk about with the United Fruit Company, Afghanistan, all these people, they will bankroll your enemies if you're standing up to the central banks. And that's what they did to Napoleon. So Napoleon's forces, all these people that declared wars, their forces exceeded 600,000 soldiers. Napoleon could not even muster a third of that. That makes sense, right? These are huge countries. And they thought they had him. They said, he doesn't have enough money. He can't feed this army that's a third the size of ours. He can't fund them. He doesn't have a central bank like we do. He can't just print money out of thin air. But Napoleon, being the brilliant tactician that he is, he says, forget it. I'm selling Louisiana to the U.S. for $3 million, and that's his funding. And this creates peace and prosperity for a brief period. But the bankers, as we've learned anything, they are a patient group. They will wait. The central bankers will wait as long as it takes to strike when the iron's hot. And in 1806, their war kicked off. France was forced to engage in needless, senseless wars for 9 years. He formed a continental blockade to destroy England's export trade. England could not finance her imports or fund her allies at the same time. So it was a brilliant idea. And in 1807, Napoleon goes to Tsar Alexander I, who was another OG. We'll hopefully get to him today. And they said, dude, let's ally up. All right. You don't have a central bank. I don't have a central bank. Let's stop this. Formed a continental blockade, blah, 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 blah. So Napoleon and Tsar Alexander agreed to an alliance, making them masters of continental Europe. These 2 countries joined together were the powerhouses of continental Europe. They were the only 2 countries in Europe that did not have usury systems indebted to the Archids and all the central bankers. Only 2. So it made sense that they should pair up. But after a few years, Russia started violating their agreement. They had the raw materials, but not the industrial products that England used to give them. So he told Napoleon, Tsar Alexander, you either get me these industrial products, or I have to go somewhere else because we don't have them. And there was no train system yet in Europe. France could not deliver these goods through the sea, obviously. So Napoleon said, well, you're my enemy now, buddy. And he invaded them on 1812 with an army of 500 soldiers, which will be the worst decision he ever made. I don't know who that guy is. So Napoleon decided to invade Russia. He reaches Russia in September, finding it totally abandoned. I think like Moscow or whatever, one of those first cities there. And the winter destroyed his army. He left with only 100,000 of his original 500K soldiers. And the following year, he was defeated in 1813. And he gets banished to Elba, hopes to make a comeback. And then the Battle of Waterloo happens in Belgium in 1815. And if you guys don't know this story, so the Battle of Waterloo was another move that Artemis brought up Napoleon, Russia, and Tartaria. I like don't know where I fall on Tartaria. So that's like the theory, though, is that right, that Napoleon was supposedly invading Russia to destroy Tartaria. Tartaria was in Russia, if people don't know, in that area. I don't know. I can't. That's like so. I used to be really big into Tartaria, and then I thought like, I don't know, dude. There's too much. I don't know. But yeah, so Napoleon, though, he has this battle in Waterloo. And so the Arkids, they've got a son in France and they have a son in England. So they're the only people that can cross through Europe in these enemy lines because they've got all the money in the world. They just pay people off. And so they come back after the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon loses, surprise. Well, they come back there and they tell everyone in England, Napoleon won. England's toast. Everyone, the stock market dumps 99% in one day. Everyone's selling everything for pennies. But who's there to buy it all up? Our favorite family. And yeah. So anyway, okay, he loses at Waterloo. All the belligerents against him in France, all of them were funded by Nathan Arkid, England, Prussia, all of them. So now, why would the bankers? Oh, and France was also funded by the Arkids at this time in 1815. So now, why would they do that? Why would Nathan Arkid fund enemies and both sides of the war? Greed, dude, because no matter what, they're going to win. And they didn't stop. They started doing this in 1815. You can bet your bottom dollar they haven't stopped funding both sides of the war ever. Maybe the only war is the Boer War. That's next episode. We'll talk about that. But they fund World War I, World War II. We talked about this. You guys know this. All of it. So Napoleon loses again, gets exiled to the British island of St. Helena, where he dies under suspicious circumstances. He was giving one of his inner circle was an Arkid spy. He'd been poisoning him with arsenic for months, and he dies at 51. He was hiding in his meals. So this is a common pattern for anyone who's going against their goal of being the world bankers and the NWO and having enslaved everyone in this debt-based system. They kill you. They will kill you. And we're going to have plenty more examples as we keep going. So, but just to go over what he was able to do in his time as Emperor of France, he reduced taxes, removed usury. And then none of this, the reduction of taxes, who built the roads, blah, blah, blah. He was able to totally turn around the French economy. He increased trade, development of new industries, cotton and sugar beet. He constructed over 20,000 miles of new roads, 12,000 miles of regional roads, 1,000 miles of canals and bridges, which required dredging of harbors, public buildings, all financed, issue interest, usury-free money from the Banque de France that he was the president of. He built Imperial University, which administered French education to sciences, technology, midwifery, veteran science, obstetrics. And his quote was, "The Allied powers cannot take from me hereafter the great public works I have executed, the roads which I made over the Alps, and the seas I have united." Boom, dude. What a badass. I don't even care if he was a Mason. He was anti-usury. So, dude, he's my boy. I love it. Usury has ruined the world. It's made us all in slaves. And so anyone that stands up against it, I tip my hat to you, sir. I wish I had his cool hat, this little pirate looking hat. I tip that. I should buy one next one and wear it. All right. Okay. All right. I'm just looking at the chat here, see if there's anything big going on. Got a debate going on with Tartaria. There's like a few topics, people taking a quick spin, few topics that I don't want to take a stance on. Flat Earth, don't want to take a stance on it. Tartaria, David says not a pirate hat. David, it kind of looks like a pirate hat. What do you mean? It looks like a pie. I could see a pirate wearing that. But and if he's the cause of that, of Pasteur and things, he stopped usury. You know what I mean? So like, we know so little of our history. All I can tell you is that he was big on being a nationalist. He kicked out the central banks. I mean, I don't care what he did beyond that. Like that, any public leader that we have that does that has done anything like that? No, no. So I'm sure he's had some bad things. I'm sure he's a Mason, and and so I'm kind of lightly joking when I say these people are awesome, but history writes him as a bad person. History mocks him. So again, these are good indicators. Well, history doesn't mock Alexander Hamilton. They actually wrote a Broadway play about him, and he was pushing for the Central Reserve ever since he got into power. So I always take like what history says with like a very big grain of salt, because there's often more to the story. But that may totally be true, Artemis. I don't know. Anyway, all right. Oh yeah, I don't take a stance on flat Earth, Tartaria, and what was the other one? I don't take a stance on. I don't know. Oh, crypto. I say what I think, but I don't know. I'm like, because people get very sensitive about flat Earth. Very, very sensitive. Oh, I don't think he's the cause for our pandemic. I think that's a pretty big stretch. But anyway, all right. So during the colonial period of the American colonies, they created their own paper money. First, they called it colonial script or bills or credit, freed them from control of the English banks. They were running inflation-free environment with few taxes. The colonists were so amazing, dude. Think of the bravery to just travel to a new land. You don't know what's there. Indians are killing you. Your friends, you don't even know after someone died after a year. Crazy, dude. But so you would not, so this freed them from the control of the English banks. They said, we're printing our own cash. We can't wait for you to ship over, English bills. The prosperity that occurred, guys, you would not believe it. And these are some quotes to prove that. 1763, the hornball, the guy who would have sex with nuns or prostitutes dressed as nuns, who had 13 bodies buried in his basement, Ben Franklin visited London. He was shocked to see the slums and the wide-scale poverty, because that didn't exist in America. Why didn't it exist? Because there was no central bank. There was no usury debt-based system. And people were killing it, man, hustling all day. The following year, 1764, the Bank of England introduces a currency bill. You think it's going to be a beneficial one? No. It restricted the colonies to issue their own money. So instead of the Bank of England ordering the colonists to issue bonds at interest, sell them back to the Bank of England. So instead of the Bank of England order the colonists to like issue bonds at interest, sell them back to the Bank of England in exchange for English money. I don't know what the hell that means, but basically they just got back under the Bank of England's thumb. Within a year of the Bank of England doing this, half the population in the colonies became destitute. Half. The Stamp Act of 65 was the last straw, but the abolition of the colonial currency, that was the primary cause for the Revolutionary War. They went from prosperous to half of the population being destitute, broke, and living in slums. Just insane. So not some, also, it wasn't, also the reason for the war wasn't some Freemasons dressing up as Indians dumping tea in the ocean. Again, did your guys' history class ever talk about, say, the reason for the Revolutionary War was because the Bank of England said, you guys need to use our system. You can't have colonial script. It's illegal now. No, I've never heard that. I heard the Revolutionary War was started because of the Tea Party and taxation without representation. No, the main issue was that 50% of the population just became destitute overnight because they changed the rules. So after in 1775, we have the Continental Congress. They want to issue their own currency. And so for the war, pretty much. So they issued 241 million. And who's this? What picture is this? Oh, I don't know. Oh, so now the Englands and our kids, they can't stand this. They're doing it again, these damn colonists. They worked around the bank. So so soon, what did the Bank of England do? And I talked about this just again. Fiat currency isn't inherently bad. It's not bad if it's monitored by the government. But So the colonists did it again. What does Bank of England do, which was ingenious? They printed millions of counterfeit colonial script, shipped it over to America to screw the Americans or the colonists. I mean, brilliant plan, right? And they're going to do it again too in a little bit, but brilliant. So they print all these fake bills, ship them from England to New York Harbor. The Continental dollar, it held on for 2 years, even though they were shipping millions in fake script. But once the counterfeit started to increase, because they just kept shipping more and more and more, value soon fell away. And by 1780, $1 was worth 2.5 cents. So just think how disgusting you have to be of a human being to, these people are going to starve. They're going to die. People are going to lose everything. Thousands of people, because you don't want to see them succeed. So you print fake money. You're putting people into destitution, into poverty. People are going to have to make decisions that you would never dream of having to make. And they're okay with that. Like, these are just so amazingly horrible people, like horrible, right? I mean, isn't that just so, like, think of a mom in the 1700s. She has, her husband dies. She has very little. Now her $20 she had is worth 13 cents. What do you think she's going to do for money? There's only one thing she can do. Like, it's truly beyond disgusting. Anyway, all right. So yeah, so they reduced it because of the counterfeits. And also 2.5 cents of the original dollar. What do you think our dollar is worth from the original dollar in 1914? It's worth 3% of that original dollar. And they weren't pounding out counterfeits to do that on purpose. They did that trying. To run a successful bank. So when these, like I said, when these parasites get an idea that works, they did it with America. They then go do it to France. 17 factories in England were working around the clock printing counterfeit bills. This caused hyperinflation, starvation, destitution. Also led to my boy Napoleon say, F you. And that's why in 1808, he created a new currency from the livre to the franc, because England just shipped millions of counterfeit bills of the livres while Napoleon just got into power to crash his economy. So again, another reason why I lean on the side that Napoleon was a good guy, because whenever, again, you're against the central bank, they want to take you out. And being against the central bank, you're always in the right. In 1783, Robert Morris, who has a university named after him in Pittsburgh, if you guys are not aware, Robert Morris, who was a millionaire, signed the Declaration or whatever, he died penniless. Oh, like so many of the founders. Oh, boo-hoo. And I used to feel bad. I used to say, because I know Robert Moore, I looked him up before. I was like, oh, wow, such bravery, he died penniless. Wow. Well, you want to know what Robert Morris did? So now karma's a B word. He introduced a bill which restored the U.S. government to the servitude of the central bankers, trying to get through with the Bank of North America. So you deserved exactly what you got, Robert. Glad you died penniless. In 1791, the Bank of North America was followed by a second central bank called the First Bank of the U.S., given us to by a guy that they make plays about, Broadway shows about, Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton, for you guys that don't know, he was most likely an art kid bastard son that grew up in the Caribbean. He was working hand in hand with his bastard father's bank, why he pushed for the central bank so hard. David put a good thing. David said, same thing the Union did during the Civil War. I did not know that. So David was referring to the counterfeiting. Thank you. That's a really interesting fact. Can make some good coin dressing up as a nun. It worked before. I don't know. I don't know what that means. But yeah, so the bank was strong. It was most like a Rothschild bastard. He was strongly opposed by John Adams, Madison, and Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson's awesome quote: "The central bank is an institution of the most deadly hostility existing against the principles and form of our Constitution. I believe that the banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies." And he was right, dude. The central banks fund the standing armies, so they're definitely more dangerous. Hey, Artemis, we can agree to disagree, dude. I think from this, I would say he's a good leader. So That's all I got. In 1792, the Arkid Bank got right to work, causing the Panic of 1792, flooding the market with cheap loans to anyone who wanted them. And so you wanted to buy a house, take the loan, take the loan. They gave loans to everyone. And then they called them all in to cause a crash. Kind of reminds me of like '08. I don't know anything about banking, but they were giving a loan to anybody and selling them as solid bank loans, and it crumbled. So a similar concept was used. They wanted to crash the market to buy up everything pennies on the dollar, like they always do. In 1795, the bank had lent $6 million to the government, 60% of its capital, and they demanded partial repayment of this loan. So the central banks, they're trying to crash America's new country, even though it's their bank, probably again, just trying to further enslave them in debts. But the government did not have the funds to pay back this suddenly and forced to sell its shares. But by this little devious ruse, the bank became 100% privately owned, 75% foreigners. So what they did is they were able to kick out the government, the U.S. government, in their new created bank, and now it is totally private owned. No say whatsoever. Just now they can literally, they got it. America is then theirs. They own it. They own it. In 1811, the bank charter came up for renewal. The bank was concealing its profits because it was totally operated by private bankers and foreigners. And many of our honest people in government said, this is definitely like unconstitutional. Like that we're being enslaved. We just fought this. And it was designed to serve the business interests of the North at the expense of the South. Jefferson was a super anti-charter guy. The honest press, which existed at the time, called the banking swindles, vultures, vipers, cobras. Damn, could you imagine having newspapers that wrote the truth? Wow. It must have been like truly amazing to be a part of that. And I think that's probably why we're so ingrained in us that it's the news should be trusted, especially by the older generations, because for their ancestors and our grandparents and great grandparents, though there was, papers were owned by JP Morgan and everything like that. But for the most part, there existed papers that weren't totally bought out, So the bill was defeated by a wafer thin margin, 65 to 60. So there were 64 people that voted, yes, let's do it again. Let's give them another charter. Let's keep us enslaved. Probably they were all bought off, I'm sure. But 1811, the bank closed its doors. America was back. We won. Now you might be thinking, 1811, there's something that happens very soon. I'm sure it's totally unrelated, but there's something that happens soon. And what I'm referencing is the War of 1812. So the principal shareholder, Mayor Amschel, was very upset that his new bank didn't get a charter. He has a lovely quote: either the application for renewal of the charter is granted, or the United States will find itself in a most disastrous war. And that was lovely, Mayor Amschel, our kid. Thank you for being such a beacon of hope in this dark world. He followed up with a lovely statement: I will teach those impudent Americans a lesson and bring them back to their colonial status. So as the predator class usually does, our kids go to and tell this bought prime minister, they tell them the British Prime Minister, Spencer Perceval, to declare war on the U.S. and resurrect his bank. So 4 years earlier, Perceval joined the cabinet when England was at war with France, and one of his main tasks was to raise the cash for the war. So also important to note, Perceval's secretary, oh wait, that was who this picture was. Oh my God, you guys. Oh my God. Let me pull up my, what the heck? Let's see. I'm just going through photos. Oh, wow. We had like Napoleon photos that I missed. Look at this. This is a Napoleon photo. I thought it was cute because they had like little drawings of where the Russian was, France was, blah, blah, blah. All right. Oh, this is the first central bank in America. It's actually in Philadelphia. And I should have looked up where it was. I was usually I was struggling during that time of my life, but I don't know where it is. So I think I know where it is, but I should have looked it up. Here's another photo of the central bank in Philly. I love, dude, the set, like that colonial time period. Could you imagine just riding your horse everywhere? Like, it's just so unfathomable. It's awesome. I love thinking about that time period. Okay. All right. Now we're good. Now we're up to date. So this photo will relate to what we're just talking about. So Percival, his secretary, the British Prime Minister, Percival, he doesn't want to go to war with the US. Britain is already involved in wars with France, with everybody pretty much. They're struggling to have enough men to do it. But our kids, they're adamant about getting that charter back. So his secretary was actually like a bag man of sorts for the our kids for a long time. He was like their inside guy to sway Percival into the way that the our kids wanted. So at the same time, agent provocateurs of the our kids, just like how they do it, the CIA has done it to us. And the CIA is the central bank's police. So they paid people to go to North America to provoke the Americans in 1811, because the British were short on soldiers. Percival didn't want to go to the war. France had a blockade on them, but they weren't short on cash because they can just print cash whenever they want, baby. So they printed it and paid people to be agent provocateurs in America, paid them to be traitors, armed the Indians to slow the westward expansion of the Americans. And I always wondered that too. How did the Indians get so many weapons? Bankers. Bankers were funding or were arming the enemy of my enemy is my friend, or whatever the saying is. And that's how they got all these weapons. Obviously, they didn't have them in the same supply as the Americans, but they were getting these weapons from the British, from the French, because they were using them as pawns, which is pretty kind of depressing. But that's how our kids were giving weapons to the Indians to kill Americans. Just crazy, right? Just so crazy. So Percival was getting so much pressure from Nathan Arkid to make a declaration of war on the U.S., and he refused. He refused. So I respect that. I respect that a lot. And as we just said, the British Army was fighting France in a scuffle with Spain, Portugal. He had no desire to commit more troops, and especially not on these interest-bearing bank loans from his Bank of England. He's just going to put England even in more debt. Well. Can you guess what happened to Percival? Said no to war. He's got to go, dude. So the same thing that happens to Jackson, Lincoln, JFK, anybody who Napoleon, whoever stands in the way of central banking, you got to go. And a lone gunman, just a deranged guy. He was lost his mind, went and kills Percival, and that's it. That's this photo that I have right here. There's just shot him in the House of Commons in the lobby. Again, that's the way he's described, a lone gunman. There's a lot of lone gunmen, people. I don't know if you knew this, but lone gunmen seem to kill powerful people, and it's only a lone gunman, oftentimes with 3 initials of their name. It's just so weird how that always happens. I wonder what that means. So John Billingham, that was who killed him, worked as an importer and exporter, which remind me of George Costanza for any Seinfeld fans, for the our kids. And he had just returned from being imprisoned in Russia for owing 5,000 rubles. And so 1812, Percival enters the lobby of the house right after he said, "No war, we're not doing it." He enters, Bellingham steps forward, pop, pop, shoots him in the heart. Percival collapsed and died within minutes. 4 days later, and this is the other thing they always do, especially after these high-profile hits, he has a trial 4 days later, 2 days, he's hung because dead man tell no tales. And case closed. Crazy lone gunman. One of many. Always, the trials are so quick. They just charge them and get them out because they know if they talk, their little scam might be brought to light. Also important to note, Percival was about to sign a trade order to lower tensions with France. He didn't want to fight with France. He was trying to slow it down. He realized this is insane. He's being played. Gets killed. Oh boy, this guy. Here comes a real Freemason. Here we go. I had $25 on the lone gunman. Brian, you'll get your winnings in the mail. But so, back to Freemasons. Back over the ocean in America at 1812, there was a man named Henry Clay. This guy right here. Let's make it a little bigger. Henry Clay. So Henry Clay, I knew I heard that name before. He led a group of young congressmen known as the Warhawks. Oh, that's always good being known as the Warhawks. I'm sure he was a stand-up guy that you would love to be your representative. The Warhawks, they were, trying to whip everyone together to vote and declare war on Britain. 79 to 49 votes. They won. 19 to 13 in the Senate. And I quickly searched Henry Clay because I knew I heard that name before, and he was able, obviously, to get the war started. But I looked him up. The first thing I see, great press. The one article said, "The power of compromise, like Henry Clay." What's up, Josh? My man. My man. But yeah, so Henry Clay, and this just goes to my theory that if history writes you as a bad person, oftentimes you fought the central bank, you were a nationalist, and you tried to do what was right for your people, not for the world, for your people. And so Henry Clay, he had a lovely few articles written about him being great at compromise. Meanwhile, he's known as the Warhawk General or whatever. And that just makes sense. Also, he's a Freemason. He becomes a lead Freemason of Kentucky, but we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. So back in England, Percival's successor, Lord Robert Liverpool, was a shockingly enthusiastic supporter of the War of 1812. The war happens 2 years later, 24,000 lives are lost. Millions are spent. The U.S. was in $105 million of debt. Their population was 8 million people, and they were in $105 million worth of debt. That's insane, dude. That is insane. And dollars was actually worth something then. That's an insane amount of debt to be in for a 2-year pointless war that was just the Arkids acting out on the threat that he said that if the Americans don't accept this charter, they will be in a boatload of trouble. And all these people went along with it because they were getting paid. I don't know what you do with people, dude. I don't know what you do with greedy and corrupt people. That's what our history is filled with. And they tell you they're a good person. I don't know what you do, dude. I just don't know. And greed is so powerful for so many weak-willed people. Like money, obviously money's nice and I want to have money and I want to buy things. But would I sell my countrymen, especially back in these days, to enrich myself? I mean, that takes a special kind of evil. And maybe that's who goes into politics. I don't know. So as a result, the national debt increased 182% from 45 million to 127 million in 1815. So the second bank of the US had enlarged its capitals to 35 million, establishing branches of the banks to lend fiat money at compound rates of interest. So in 1822, Monroe appoints Nicholas Brittle to the president of the bank. Of course, Brittle was an Arkid bagman. He met them in Paris years earlier, and he just was their little b-boy. So there was a recession, artificially, of course, induced 1819, very profitable for the banksters who were able to buy up assets at depressed prices. Convinced Jackson the only way to stop this abuse was to start the normal central bank. And I talked about on my last episode, this buying up at pennies on the dollar. This trick wasn't new. They did it back in the Middle Ages and in ancient times. And Caesar had a rule against this. He said, should an emergency happen, you cannot just swoop in and buy everything because of a panic. And he stuck by that rule. So Caesar, another OG of the anti-banking gang. But yeah, so they did. That's all they do. Waterloo, this recession of 1819, and we got plenty more that they're going to do the same thing again and again and again. But Andrew Jackson, my real OG, he's a boss, hates the bankers. I love him. Yeah, he was mean to the Indians. He was a nationalist. I don't know what you want me to tell you, dude. I'm not going to apologize for him. I'm just joking. But anyway, so his chief slogan was vote Andrew Jackson, no bank. The Congress has the right under the Constitution to issue paper money, and it was given to them to be used by themselves, not delegated to individuals or corporations. And this is his awesome quote. If the American people understood the rank and injustice of our banking and money system, there would be a revolution tomorrow morning. So obviously, as history will tell us, if you stand up against the Arkids and their central bank, You're not going to last long. So they sent an agent to try and kill my boy, AJ. Here he is getting shot. AJ, just a machine, dude. They shot at him. They hit him. Didn't phase him. He took his cane and he almost killed the guy, smacking him with his cane. I mean, that's a man, dude. He said, you think that I can still, this is only a flesh wound. And then he proceeded to beat the hell out of the guy. Such a boss. But Jackson, he pulled all government investments out of their central bank, letting it collapse, not renewing the charter. And that's why the hit was put out on him by the banksters. He then, so amazing, he then promptly, I don't know how he did, he pays the national debt in its entirety, gets us even, leaving a surplus of $50 million in the treasury. He knew the banks were a den of vipers. He paid them off. He said, I want nothing more to do with them. And he left a surplus of $50 million in the account. Dude, so he replaced the central bank with a treasury system based on redeemable paper and specie. And then during President Tyler, the next president, 2 attempts were made to get the central bank back and running, pushed through by our lovely war hawk leader, Henry Clay. And just what's crazy is I'm sure government was more efficient, hopefully, in this time. But think they made 2 separate attempts to get a central bank back into law within 4 years. Dude, nothing moves that quick. I mean, think how long it takes to do anything in office, let alone 2 times. But they forced 2 events and Tyler said no. Henry Clay, of course, now became the Grand Master of the Kentucky Lodge. I'm sure he had no bankers, I'm sure. None of them. And Tyler, being Jackson's boy at heart, rejected both attempts. He started getting thousands of letters telling him how he was going to be murdered or assassinated. And against all economic teachers' ideas, against all the propaganda, against all of the nonsense, the U.S. thrived for the next 77 years without a central bank. It thrived. Just like it did when the colonial script was around, just like England did last episode during the Middle Ages when they kicked out all usury, when they banned it, just like ancient Rome when Caesar banned usury. Society raises. People start being happier all around because they're not living in invisible chains. So America had 77 years of prosperity, wealth, and we dominated. We turned into the greatest empire during this time. So, in exchange, I don't know what this, but anyway, to have new interest-free treasury, greenback dollar bills were issued by Lincoln in 1862. And so I don't like Abraham Lincoln. I think he was a tyrant. I've based this off of, people I respect, Don Jeffries, go read his books. And I'm pretty sure he was, because he was attacking the South for just using their right to secede, and they were taxing the hell out of him, and he didn't care. But he's eventually, though, for some reason, I don't know why he does this, he tries to create an interest-free treasury greenback dollar in 1862. And up to 1873, gold and silver you could literally take your gold and silver, go to the U.S. Mint, they would coin it for free, no charge. And so the greenback dollar bills, I don't know. But anyway, he tries to do these interest-free dollars. He rejects offers from private bankers to lend the U.S. money at 24 to 36% interest. Obviously, because anyone that, again, maybe even just remotely likes the country they're governing, you wouldn't sign up and won't get money at 24 to 36% interest and put that on your people. And so because he did these greenbacks, he was able to issue $347 million at no cost to the American people, except the expense of printing and distributing. And his defiance of the central banking led to his assassination by John Wilkes Booth. I don't know. Again, I don't like, we's Play-Doh snakes. What's up, my main man? But yeah, so I don't know if this makes me a little conflicted about Lincoln. I still think he was a tyrant. I still think the Civil War was a horrible, horrible thing. He scorched earth, just sick stuff. But why did he try to do this greenback thing to keep a central bank out? I don't know. Did he have a change of heart? Because it was pretty closely after this is when he gets assassinated. So I don't know why he did it. I'm like stuck. It's a conundrum in my brain. Why would Lincoln do that? He's an evil guy. Why wouldn't he just let the central bank in? But regardless, he gets killed. And the Civil War of 61 to 65 left us with a war debt of $5 billion. As a result of the inflation, these bonds declined in value to $2.5 billion. So we had $5 billion in like war bonds or whatever. Again, I know nothing about banking, so if I sound like an idiot, but I'll do what my understanding of it was. So the war debt of $5 billion, these bonds, they depreciated in value. They went to half. They were only worth $2.5 billion. So the R kids and their little bag man, August Belmont, who I've talked about before, they buy up $2.5 billion, the whatever's left over of these bonds that depreciated in value. And then in 1868, they're just going to wait. They're going to hold them. They know what they're doing. 1868, the main Democratic Party candidate, George Pendleton, he's replaced with a more popular guy, Seymour, who wanted to keep us out of the central banks because people realized then how evil they were. So Belmont, August Belmont, our kid's little bag man, he was originally supporting George Pendleton, the leader of the DNC, because he wanted a central bank. But so he has to switch sides, and he gets all of the our kid newspapers, all of his resources to support Ulysses S. Grant and just demonize Seymour, who was an anti-central banking guy. Ulysses S. Grant won. He introduced this Public Credit Act, which paid out all those $5 billions worth of war bonds that depreciated to $2.5 billion. He said, I'll pay you out in gold. Well, that worked out well for the R kids. So they took their worthless papers of $2.5 billion, gave them back to Ulysses S. Grant. They got $2.5 billion in gold, and they're not even Americans. They made literally 100% profit. So I'm sure Ulysses S. Grant had no connection to them. I'm sure he wasn't funded by them. I'm sure he didn't make some backroom deals. Just, disgusting. Disgusting. This resulted, so the silver exchange, this was something I also learned. So the silver exchange was abolished and replaced by a gold standard. So I thought, I got an awesome comic of it. Here it is. So gold, for people listening, it's like a cartoon of a Roman soldier with a gold coin, and he's like standing on the silver coin soldier with his sword out because he's king. And so I always thought, gold standard, that was positive, right? Because they got rid of the gold standard. The gold standard isn't positive for us. So the silver exchange is silver is the people's money. And so in this year, they abolished the silver exchange and replaced it with a gold standard. But what this does, it lets the top dogs hoard all the wealth, and the little people there's no exchanging of money because they're hoarding the gold. So a silver exchange, it's the people's money. It's more exchanged freely. It keeps money in circulation. It helps the economy. Whereas a gold standard, people hold the wealth and screw everyone. And the art kids were in London bribing congressmen to get that passed. The forced abandonment of the people's money, silver, was also instituted in the German Empire when they stopped minting coins in 1871. And America's silver swindle happened in 1873. And it was known as the crime of 1873 when they switched this from the silver standard to the gold standard. And obviously it was very important. There's like tons of comics about it. You can go look them up. I might have more, or I saw lots, but I just put that one on there. So when people say, let's get back on the gold standard, tell them, no, dude, we got to get back on the silver standard. The gold standard's whack compared to the silver exchange. And the gold standard wrought havoc on the American economy, enabling private bankers to withhold loans, restrict money supply at will. And so I talked about this again, also first episode, if you missed it, a non-fiat currency ran by a non-central bank, a metals-based currency, like that's it. Well, you get into trouble because rich billionaires will be able to grab all the metals, hold it and rise or drop the price as they sees fit by releasing or pulling back their gold in the market. So it's really like, I honestly think the best system is a fiat currency backed by silver, watched by the government. But who am I? I don't know economics. I didn't even graduate college. So I've taken like one economics class in my life, and I definitely didn't learn anything. So I could be wrong. I could be wrong on a lot of things. But the bankers, they had us on the ropes. They just kept punching and punching and punching. We didn't have the Fed yet, but we're struggling here, guys. And they're just doing the, banging on our head. So what did the bankers do with this gold standard? Well, they created panics or bank runs 73, 84, 90, 97, 1903, 1907. It got so bad that President James Garfield in 81, this was a beautiful quote. If you learn nothing from this, this is a great quote. Whoever controls the volume of money in any country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. And when you realize the entire system is very easily controlled, one way or another, by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate. He knew what was up, dude. And what happens to Mr. Garfield, who I love, Garfield the cat. Just so you guys know, love him. He's one of my favorites. My cat was behind me. Oh, he left. He looks like Garfield. I wanted to name him Garfield, but I didn't. Liv said I couldn't name him Garfield. She didn't respect the Garfield comics like I do. I could just, Brian, because you just comment, I have this Garfield sweater. I'll post it, but it's a picture of Garfield in a cowboy hat. And it says, when I die, I don't know if I'll go to heaven. I don't know if they let cowboys in. Don't know if I go to heaven. Don't know if they let cowboys in. I'm just going to show. Oh, here it is, guys. You just have to see it. And I have the sweater version of it. But I just want to show you because it's such a cool shirt. And I hope you guys don't mind. Hope you don't mind. One sec. Here it is. Here it is. Look at this shirt. See, when I die, I'll make it bigger so everyone can see. Heck yeah. Look at that shirt. Awesome. All right. That was all I wanted to do. All right. Now we're back to the stream. Love Garfield, though. He's a badass. He's a badass. All right. So Garfield, he makes this awesome quote, saying, if you only knew people, dude, they run it all. These banksters run it all. And what happens? Well, I'm sure it had nothing to do with the other, but 2 weeks later, Garfield was assassinated. He was gunned down by, what do you guys think? Was it a military? Was it what is it? Was it a fairy? Was it a leprechaun? No, it was a lone gunman. Of course. And maybe someone could say, well, what else could it be if it's not the lone gunman? What I say is this, is that the story every time after a president or someone gets hit, it's this guy that's often deranged, often he's upset with somebody or whatever and has a strife, and that's why he does it. But we all know that's BS. That's just BS. He was paid. Oh, and this is where the quote was. So his name was Charles J. Guiteau, right before trial, before they killed him, because that's what they also do, as we already said, important men in Europe put me up to the task and had promised to protect me if I was caught. Oh, also Garfield, when he was shot, he didn't die from the bullet wound. I agree, Artemis, assassin bingo. Oh, that'd be fun. But he didn't die from the gun wound. He actually survived that. He didn't get medical care. They wouldn't take him, or they didn't do the right things. And yeah, isn't that crazy, dude? So they wanted to kill him. He said too much. They killed him. And then 1907, the panic had even worse effects. Jacob Schiff, CEO of Kuhn, Loeb & Co., whose family also, I believe, roomed with the Orchids back in Germany before they really blew up, back when they were with Prince William of the Orange guy, Prince of Orange, whatever. And I think it was Schiff. I'm pretty sure. I always get them and Kuhn mixed up, but yeah, I think so. Or Warburg mixed up. But anyway, warned unless, so the panic of 1907 happens in America. We lose it all again. Artificially induced, of course. And here's a nice warning. Unless we have a central bank with adequate control of credit resources, this country is going to undergo the most severe and far reaching money panic in history. Is that a warning from Jacob Schiff, or is that a threat? And then in October of that year, JP Morgan, an Orchid front man, he's the American counterpart. I think the best way to describe him was that so there was him versus Jacob Schiff and Warburg. And so people back then, if you don't know this, were relatively anti-Semitic. So JP Morgan provided the option of a Christian banker as opposed to the other guys. It was a scam. He got his funding from our kids. That's how he got started. I think I talked about this. JP Morgan died, one of the richest people in America, just to prove that he is an ARKid agent. He died with $11 million. He owned everything, dude. He owned so much stuff. He died with $11 million. He actually owed bills. I think he had to pay, like it went down. It was nothing. I mean, 11 million obviously is still tons of money in this time, but not to what like the Rockefellers have or the ARKids. Like he was just a front man. But yeah, so he starts circulating rumors that his rival bank was insolvent. And this ensued tons of people running to the bank, trying to get their money out, which they couldn't get out because they ran out of money. And everything in the New York Stock Exchange drops 50% of its value that day. Then that year, 11% drop in industrial production, 26% rise in imports, which means we're not making enough stuff, food, unemployment to 8%. Just doing this is all they just do whatever they have to beat back the independent Americans. And then in the papers, they run, this would never happen again if we had a central bank. Oh, we would never have these booms and busts without a central bank. Yeah, just lies. Whoa. I just slid my thing up and I lost where my spot was in my notes. So bear with me here. Oh, okay. We got it. We're back. So in order to mislead the public, they had two plans to save us in 1907. Two plans. The Aldrich Plan, which was, the grandfather of Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller, known as the Aldrich Plan. And the other plan written by Paul Warburg, who was acting, again, on behalf of the ARKid interest. Both the same thing. They're just giving you the illusion of choice. I think Artemis used that comment somewhere in the chat. So they have these two plans. We just are in this horrible panic, 50% drop, and you have the Aldrich Plan, you have the Warburg Plan, and they say, we're working on it, American public. Yes, the result of both these plans are exactly the same, but we're going to use different words to try and trick you, to make you think one's a good one and divide you better this way. So maybe the Democrats, they can champion the Aldrich Plan while the Republicans can champion the Warburg Plan. And we can have you fight so you don't realize the end result is going to be exactly the same. Also interesting to note, Paul and his brother. Oh, who's Paul Warburg's brother? Somebody's got to know. Not Mark. I don't know. So Paul Warburg, he was our Federal Reserve guy. He was corrupt, disgusting. Well, his brother was also a banker in Germany. And after World War I, when, you'd think like, damn, are these brothers hate each other? Like, we just went to war and put all this propaganda, how they were like killing babies and things. Between the two of them, they were able to decide the payment plan that Germany was going to get onto to pay back, to totally destroy Germany. And we know what happens after that. But yeah. So Brian says, you want the firing squad or the hangman? Oh, dude, probably the firing squad. What about you, Brian? I think that would be I don't want to wait for that thing to fall. Damn, that'd be horrible. Horrible. Regardless, both plans, like I said, were to get a central bank. So 11/22/1910, the whole vat of parasitical, disgusting curse word, snuck away to do a huge Easter egg hunt. I'm just joking. They went away to go, this story. They went to Jekyll Island. Georgia, owned by JP Morgan at the time. And the next 10 days, these criminals, it was called the First Name Club, right? First Name Club. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want any of the staff, the staff that's waiting on them to reveal their identities. Anytime, guys, you need to remember this. Okay. This is really important. Anytime things are secret societies, secret meetings on an island, the reason why they're secret, guys, it's because they're doing so much good stuff. They don't want to get all the fan mail. They want to, just live their normal life. And, they don't want all the praise and the applause. They just want to do good works anonymously. And that's why they're secret. Right. I'm being very facetious. It's just disgusting, dude. Like how we accept this as our public, because we're just so dumbed down, dude. Like a secret group of guys decided the fate of America. And that's how it's been in history forever. But we view some of these people as pioneers and industry leaders and amazing men. Amazingly evil. Yeah, they're amazingly evil. So the bill to establish the Fed was opposed by my boy, August Lindbergh, and the press would libel him, call him a racist, an anti-Semite. And he has a response to that, like, I criticize JP Morgan's banking practices as much as I criticize our kids' banking practices. But you know what the press does. And it was even doing this in 1910. They just will wash you off as an evil, degenerate person. They'll find dirt on you. They'll talk to people that may have been your friends. They will do whatever it takes if you're hurting their bottom line, if there's a chance you might shake up the status quo a little bit, they'll do something. And that's why I always talk about, like, I see like older people posting like, how much longer are we going to take this? And it's like, dude, don't post that stuff on the internet. You're going to have people watching you even more than they already are. That's not the way to go about it. You just have to, you change yourself, maybe your friend, your community, you start a garden, you clean up trash, you start having barbecues with everybody, you become friends, and we try to promote a Christian way of living. That's how you win. I don't know how I got on that. But anyway, it gets, I know this story's beat into your heads, I'm sure, but the Federal Reserve Act gets passed into law 12/23/1913. And burn that date in your mind, December 23rd, 1913, because that's always a great statistic to drop on people. Like when they say, well, when did America go bad? And you can say, well, one of the main dates was December 23rd, 1913. But Woodrow Wilson, one of my top 5 hopefuls of burning in hell, made sure that happened. He said he would keep Congress in session until it passed the bill and deny them their Christmas recess. A minority, 43 senators supported the bill, with 25 voting against, 27 refusing, and 5 members absent. The promoters promised this will save the US dollar. All these recessions and panics we've had, never again. It'll never happen again, guys. Just get this passed. Tired of inflation and losing everything because of bank runs? Sign this bill and nothing bad will ever happen again. Well, that was a lie. So since the U.S. Federal Reserve of 1914, the dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. There has been 19 recessions. The Great Depression of 1929, 1930, the current recession, which started in 2008, and this book was written in 2017. So just so you know, where he would agree that we are now in a totally chaotic time of the world. But Brian, don't joke with me like that. Don't joke with me like that. Brian says, my Mr. Stank, Freemason, who says the Bible needs to be rewritten to be more inclusive, astrotheologist that just picks and chooses certain Bible verses, says he's a fanboy of Woodrow Wilson. Not a funny joke, Brian, but I wouldn't be surprised. All right. But since 1910, the national debt has increased from $2.65 billion in 1910 to $33 trillion, not including unfunded liabilities, Social Security, which would exceed over $250 million that we don't have, that they will have to print out of thin air, which will add another $200 trillion of interest payments. You see, we are not getting out of this system. I wanted to do Russia today, but it's already an hour and a half. But I don't know how we get out of this system, guys. I don't know what we do. And I'm not like a fan of crypto. I've talked about that. I own crypto, but I don't trust it. Like, it's again just like the too good of a story. Anonymous guy wants to stand up against the Federal Reserve. We see what happens to people who stand up against the central banks. They don't last long. And especially in 2011 when that was made or whatever, they had the ability to watch everybody. They still do now, and I'm sure they do. They watch all of us. They watch I'm just joking, Brian. But they watch all of us. So to think that some anonymous good-hearted citizen didn't want any, he just anonymously created this coin. I don't know. I just struggle with that. But again, I'm an idiot, dude. I only know like a few things. But yeah. So that's the history of America and of Napoleon and France. And so we're going to do next episode, we'll do Russia. And basically the point of this is that Russia, again, they had 200 years of prosperity. Like they dominated from 1815 until the Bolshevik Revolution. They were the best in everything. And I have all these statistics to prove that. No central bank, low taxes, best education, best workers' rights, best uniformed accessibility to succeed in life, no matter your race. Like the best judicial system, as according to the president of the United States at that time, he said he wished we could repeat that or we could copy what they're doing. They dominated. And then what happened to them? The Bolsheviks happened. Who funded the Bolsheviks? The central bankers, Wall Street. So that's next episode. And we got a few more. So I hope you're enjoying this like little series. I just love, this book's awesome because it just shows every time a country doesn't have this debt slavery system, they prosper. The people prosper. Happiness, love, life, family, all these things improve because people, if they want to build a house, they can take this $100,000 loan out from the government, pay, like a 1% or what, barely, not even that's, very minimal interest rate. Or they just have to pay it back. They just have to pay it back. Imagine that, guys. Like our $33 trillion, it's something like insane. Like 25% of that isn't funding that we got. It's literally the interest that's accrued over the years. It's too much. So that's the show. Tomorrow, I got this guy who teaches about he's like a porn addict to stop you from watching porn. So he's a good guy. King David is his name on LinkedIn, on Twitter. And so that'll be at 8:30 and we'll finish up this book soon. We probably got like 2 more episodes, but I hope you're enjoying it. I'm Jack Allen. Go follow me at Kojak Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Brian, Artemis, Josh, Weez Plato, all the normal crew, and Barbara and David. Thank you for coming in, guys. And if you ever want a shout out of your handle or whatever, just send me because you guys are always here. Maybe I can get you like some followers on Twitter or something. And I'd love to know who you guys are on Twitter so I can follow you. So please send me like a DM or something. But yeah. All right, guys, I'm Jack Allen. Thanks, Brian. You're so kind, dude. I'll see some of you guys tomorrow, hopefully. And much love. God bless. Conspiracy or just a coincidence. Peace.